Onto this headline story now. It's been 2 years since the death of Western Cape top cop Charl Kinnear. His family says police are no closer to finding the truth behind his murder or protecting officers against the alleged crooks within police ranks also implicated in criminal activity. The acclaimed detective was on the verge of cracking long-running and high-profile criminal cases when he was assassinated outside his Bishop Lavis home back in 2020. Our reporter Natalie Malgas is there for us. She joins us now live. And Natalie, really difficult for a family that's, again, trying to find closure in a context where it seems there's somewhat of a dragging of feet in solving this case.
Quite a bit of dragging of feet and still many unanswered questions, Ayanda. We heard from Police Minister Becky Cele in the Western Cape between April and June this year. At least 18 police officers were fatally attacked, either in the line of duty, en route to work or home, often attacked for their pistols or as a threat, as a mechanism to intimidate officers. This, of course, not only leaves the officers bruised and fragile and concerned for their lives, but also the communities that they're supposed to protect, that they are supposed to be working in. Community members have been telling us all throughout the day in compiling all of the evidence and stories for our piece today, that they too feel vulnerable. If the police officers who are supposed to protect them also come under attack, what more of them? They feel like mere sitting ducks. And right now I'm standing with the widow of Lieutenant Colonel Charl Kinnear, who, as you mentioned, was assassinated outside his Bishop Lavis home back in 2020. And the Kinnear family has really been pursuing justice to make sure that those who are accountable, those who are behind this murder, are held to account. Thank you for your time, Nicolette. Firstly, how is the family doing when you reflect on 2 years since the passing of your husband and the boy's father?
Good morning. Thank you for having me. It's been 24 months of absolute hell. It's a roller coaster. It's emotions. There are milestones that you just realize he's not there. Our youngest recently turned 21, and he just said he didn't want anything. He didn't want anybody here, and the two of them share a birthday month as well, which made it even worse. He's a final year student. His dad is not going to be there for his graduation, etc. So it's been emotionally draining. It's been physically draining on a family. Yeah.
How are you feeling about the scope and depth of the investigation into your husband's murder right outside of your family home? Are you satisfied with the work being conducted? We know that the court case is highly publicized. It's considered a high-profile case with at least 9 people added to the charge, and it's expected to be a well-publicized trial when it eventually gets to that point. How are you feeling about the scope of the investigation right now?
Look, many have asked, why is it taking so long, etc. I think for us as a family, I think being part of a detective family, I think sort of gave us a bit of a head start in terms of the fact that we know how long my husband worked on certain cases before ultimately getting a conviction. So I think we knew that we are not going to be in court done and dusted within 2-3 months. Yes, it has been 24 months. I've said right from the start, by me, it's not about quantity. The task team and I have met many a times, and I've said it's not going to be mind-blowing for me to come and report to me every day I've arrested so much and so much people, just to have people walk out again within the next day or two. So it's really been about quality work, thorough preparation, making sure. So yes, unfortunately the system is what it is. It allows for a lot. If there's change in counsel, then you need to allow the new counsel of defense to come up to par, and that is literally what has been happening. So frustrating, yes, but I think we've still got a long way to go before we'll get to a conviction. Yeah.
Parallel to what is playing out in the courts at the moment with the criminal case and that probe into your husband's murder, IPID, the Independent Police Investigative Directorate, has also looked into the alleged inefficiencies ineptitude of the police service to have protected this high-profile senior member of their ranks. We know that the security to your home and to your husband was pulled just days before almost the assassination, leaving him vulnerable to this incident. Have you been privy to the final report, the details of this dossier put together by IPID?
Yes, I have. The report was finalized and I think handed to the minister in May, and a meeting was set up with me the week thereafter to discuss the content. So I know exactly what's happening in it. I had my questions, and that is why I was sort of blown away, because it was also extensively covered in media, and then all of a sudden, come August, then it was dropped, or the bombshell was dropped in the portfolio committee that this document has now been declared top secret, which is absolutely ridiculous, because firstly it was publicized all over. I myself received copies anonymously from so many people that how do you classify something as top secret that's out there in the public domain, that's been written about, and I think that is the side, Natalie, that a lot of people are forgetting, because the criminal side is getting a lot of coverage. You as journalists, you are in the court all the time, but where does it come to accountability of the organization? And that part is what and allow me to say disgusts me, to the extent that you've literally, or in our case as a family, just been booted to the curb, because it was, I think I was more than patient the day the minister came and the PC and everybody else immediately after the assassination, and it was to be understood that nobody was able to give us answers immediately, that there needed to be certain investigations done. We allowed that as a family. I did not write to the ministry or whoever continuously asking for answers. Later on, the IPID investigation started. Yet again, we as a family, we allowed the investigation to go its course. Now that the report is there, now all of a sudden, everybody, it's like an ice bucket challenge. What now? And nobody wants to speak about it. Nobody wants to be held accountable. It's like playing hot potato. I'm shifting the buck and blaming you. The reality is that people were clearly identified in the report. The report goes as far as saying, as these members, they failed in doing their duty as mandated by the Constitution, and that they should be held individually and collectively responsible for the death of their colleague. Now, clearer than that, it cannot be. Yes, I'm well aware that the document implicates high-ranking officers, but you know what? So be it. This is not a matter of somebody that forgot to wash a cup, and we got into work tomorrow and there was ants everywhere. Some people need to realize that if I'm in a certain position, if I'm in a certain office, with that comes accountability and responsibility, and me not doing something can cause or lead to somebody else's death, which is ultimately which happened to my husband. My husband is not the only one out there. If I continue going on and nobody reprimands me and tells me that what you are doing or in doing it this way is wrong, I'm going to continue doing it that way. So nothing that happens is going to change our situation. But the least that I feel that the organization, my husband's employer, owes us as a family is honesty. Honesty and accountability. And currently we are not getting that. Nobody wants to man up and say, I'm responsible. Neither does top management want to say that you are responsible. You need to be held responsible. You need to be held accountable. So if nobody wants to be reprimanded, nobody likes to be, nobody likes to hear that I've been in the wrong, but how are we going to correct and how are we going to prevent a tragedy like this from happening to another officer? Irrespective of whether my husband was a lieutenant colonel, he could have been a constable. If somebody's life is in danger or being threatened because of the work that he's doing, it's the organization's duty. They're not doing you a favor. They are obligated to look after you. Why is it not done? And why is it, if people are shown out for not doing their job, for not keeping you safe, for not making sure that you are able to do this interview without being shocked to death, for example, somebody needs to be held accountable. And that seems to be the problem. We are faced in the Western Cape with targets being on our officers' back. We've just come through the spree of with the taxi violence, etc. We've lost so many officers. How many more before somebody is bold enough to be man enough, and it can be a woman also, to stand up and say enough is enough?
What are some of the anecdotes that you are hearing from police officers? With the second commemoration of your husband's passing, the idea was to issue an excellence award. The person that you had nominated and thought you would award this certificate to opted to decline. Bring us into your confidence. What's the context there? What are you hearing from officers on the ground and their day-to-day experiences?
Officers are scared. They are facing trauma. They are, besides loss of life, there's members that have been injured on duty, that have thankfully survived, but their families have just been out. They've just been outcasted. They've been booted to the curb. Families like myself, we've needed to fight. I'm fortunately one of the vocal ones. What about that widow that's not? That does not give the organization the right just to walk or trample all over them. Last year, the boys and I decided that we were going to start an award to uphold my husband's legacy, known as the Charl Kinnear, or the Lieutenant Colonel Kinnear Award. I could not hand that out this year. And I said, I'm not going to lie as to why I didn't. I couldn't, because the person whom we wanted to award it to resigned from SAPS for the very same reason that my husband was killed. He was investigating high-ranking dockets, criminals, and he was under threat, and he couldn't get the protection that he needed. And I can't blame him. And when I spoke to him, he told me, I cannot allow my family to go through what your family has gone through. And that, for me, it's so sad. Because if we look at this whole triangle, if we could call it, at this stage where we are, the communities are bleeding. Our members in blue are bleeding. Their families are bleeding. The only people who are walking away here smiling is the criminal element. And how long are we going to sit there in an office, behind a door, behind a desk, and just refuse to make a decision or to hold people accountable? If members need protection, then they need to be protected. I get that we've recently seen reporting on budgets and how much was spent on VIP protection, and don't get me wrong, I understand with a certain rank comes the president needs to be protected, and ministers, etc., etc. But how do we put a value on a life? If I'm a constable and I'm threatened, does that mean because I'm not a general or I'm not a minister, my life is less important? It shouldn't be. And that is the questions that we need to be asking. If the men and women are out there protecting, investigating, and I come across whatever I uncover is dangerous, I must know, I must be able to see this to book. I must be able to see it to court freely, knowing I'm protected and my family is protected. And I think we ask the question, and we often blame, I think in June it came, how many dockets have been removed from the court roll. I think at that stage it was over 200 because of poor investigation. Now I ask myself, if I honestly am going to put my life and my family's life in line, is that not maybe partially the problem? Why are we getting the caliber of certain investigations? Because deep down, this officer knows, heaven forbid, what is going to happen to me if I do uncover all the rot that really is there. So it's a vicious spiral that keeps going and going and going.
Thank you very much, Nicolette Kinnear, the widow of Lieutenant Colonel Charl Kinnear, the head of the anti-gang unit here in the Western Cape, assassinated outside of his home 2 years ago. Ayanda.
Really strong interview there. Thanks very much indeed for that. That is our reporter there, Natalie, Malgas, live to us there from Bishop Lavis in the Western Cape.